All right, let's run through deal of the week this week. It's August 19th. This time got something a little different. So we're looking at a townhouse in DC, Southeast DC. They're asking $500,000 for the property. They started at 530. They've been slowly coming down. Now they're down to 500. This is a 4-bed, 3 full bath, 2 half bath house. You got about 1,500 square feet in the top couple floors and an extra 772 in the basement. It's pretty decent. Little one-car garage. Something I want to point out, this home is already currently fully rented. So something very unique about this. It does have a legal ADU compliant ADU. And it is rented through the Section 8 program to a different family above. Those two rents together total about $45.90 a month in rent. They think you can get up to $5,000 a month in rent. I think that's a little bit extreme personally. But at the $4,600 in rent, these numbers are quite promising. And something very nice, newer roof, new HVAC, a lot of appliances, tons of upgrades. So, really, really good stuff here. Take a look through the pictures. So I want to start with the floor plan, just to show you that kind of ADU. So the ADU is essentially this section here. Okay, so a very small little one-bedroom apartment. So they do have their full laundry, bathroom, kitchen, and bedroom all in one. Then the rest of the home has a garage, the staircase, and then a normal kind of townhouse style living room, kitchen, dining room, and then bedrooms all the way upstairs. So something a little bit different, but pretty unique here. Ultimately, this one's been sitting on the market for a little bit. Okay, it's been out there for 39 days so far. The biggest thing I'm seeing is it's just very overpriced compared to some of the neighborhood comps. All right, so all these really close by, same rough year build, ballpark same size, and all townhomes. So they're 70K above the next closest sale over 430. But honestly, this thing justifies its cost with the rental income that it's bringing in. It's almost a 1% deal there. So, numbers are very strong on this one. But that explains why it's kind of been sitting for a little bit. But if we do look at least just the neighbor next door here, this one did sell at 400. You can't tell, much more dated, not as nice as the other unit. So it's definitely worth more than that. Even if it was just a normal home buyer. But looking at some of the rental comps, so I did pull a couple different versions of comps. You got a couple smaller properties, and then a little bit bigger of a house. So I'm seeing, I think they're getting about 1,700 or so for that basement ADU. So that checks out pretty well with some of the comps. All these are roughly the same size, although a couple of them do have a couple extra bedrooms, so it might be a little bit lower, maybe 1,500 or so. But I was trying to get the math to work out to be about 4,690. In terms of the upstairs unit, there's a few full homes that were getting about 3,400, 3,500. So I think that is a little bit higher than what you should be getting. But it is through the housing voucher Section 8 programs. They are usually willing to pay relatively higher rents. But I ran the numbers off of what they actually are rented for, but that's what I'm seeing for potential market rents. You add those together, you get to the 5,000, which I think is what she's thinking as a list agent. But when you have two people living in the same property, your rents are never quite as high as what it is when you get the whole property yourself. So I do think the 4,600 is pretty reasonable, though. We do look at these numbers at a $500,000 purchase price, putting down 20%. About 7.5% rates today. Taking the taxes estimates for the HOA, and then there is a small HOA payment, about $50 a month. You get your rent there of the $45.90. That's current rents. And take a look at the numbers. This is really, really strong performing asset here. If you're looking at your cash flow side of things, you're somewhere in the ballpark of $800 to about $1,300 a month in positive cash flow. Really strong DSCR loan ratio there. All in cost of about $3,300, but you're pulling in $4,600 in rents. So really strong there. Lots of upside potential. From a cash on cash return perspective, all in cost, you're looking at a ballpark of about 115 grand. I don't see any rehab needs or any issues there. Mostly just down payment and closing costs. From a cash on cash return perspective, you're in the ballpark of about 8.5 to 13% cash on cash return. So, really, really strong numbers here. One of the highest I've personally seen. If we look at kind of long term wealth, property should get you somewhere in the ballpark of about $2 million in 30 years. So that's really promising, really strong there. And then in terms of the future projections compared to stocks, this thing is crushing the stock market big time. So even all the way out 30 years out, you're still beating the stock market. So really, really strong numbers here. This one's very, very promising. In terms of the area, it's pretty decent actually here in DC. Nothing looking too scary. Across the board over to Maryland, it gets a little bit worse, but DC, this area, new builds, bringing in nicer clientele. It's a good spot. I like it. But yeah, let me know what you think.